There is something powerful about stepping outside of yourself. When you are inside a thought, it feels loud, urgent, personal, heavy. But when you step back and observe it from the outside, something shifts. Your brain moves from emotional reactivity to cognitive processing. Instead of, I am overwhelmed, it becomes, she is feeling overwhelmed. That tiny language shift creates distance, and distance lowers intensity. The third person advantage is not about avoiding feelings. It is about creating just enough space so your nervous system can calm down. When you speak to yourself like you would speak to someone you care about, your brain listens differently. You activate regulation instead of rumination. That is the power of perspective. When we are stressed, our language becomes extremely self-focused. I cannot handle this. I am failing. Why am I like this? What is wrong with me? This activates something called the exparacel F. That is the part of your brain that experiences emotion from the inside. It fully immerses you in the event. There is no distance. There is no observer. There is only you inside the storm. And when every thought begins with I, your brain treats it as personal threat. Rumination becomes sticky because it is I-centric. The more you repeat I statements, the more your brain anchors to the emotional intensity. It becomes an egocentric anchor. You are not just having a feeling, you are fused with it. And fusion makes reasoning almost impossible. Look at these two sentences. Why am I failing? Why is Madison struggling with this task? Same situation, different processing. The first one is immersive. It pulls you inside the emotion. Your brain hears threat, identity, personal deficiency. The second one creates distance. It shifts from identity to observation. Now you are looking at the situation instead of drowning in it. This is the linguistic shift. When you move from I to your name, you activate perspective. You move from being the emotion to observing the emotion. And observation is where regulation begins. You are not denying the struggle. You are stepping outside of it just enough to think clearly. That tiny shift gives your brain room to problem solve. When you are emotionally flooded, your brain is burning energy. Stress is metabolically expensive. Your amygdala fires, your body tightens, your thoughts race. Rumination uses cognitive fuel. But here is the wild part. Self-distancing through third-person language reduces emotional reactivity without increasing mental effort. You are not suppressing. You are not forcing positivity. You are not adding a new task. You are simply changing perspective. Researchers call this a metabolic free lunch. You get emotional regulation benefits without additional cognitive cost. It is efficient. Your brain calms down without you having to wrestle it. That is powerful. When we say, I am anxious, the brain treats anxiety like identity. It becomes fused. It feels permanent. But when we shift to Madison is feeling anxious right now, something subtle happens. The feeling becomes temporary. It becomes an experience, not a definition. De-identifying does not mean dismissing. It means separating the observer from the sensation. Your brain creates sensations. It creates intrusive thoughts. It creates emotional spikes, but you are the awareness watching them. When you separate identity from experience, you reduce shame. You reduce panic. You reduce the urgency to fix it immediately. This is especially powerful in OCD because OCD attacks identity. It says this thought means something about you. Self-distancing quietly says no, this is a brain event, not a character flaw. And that shift alone lowers intensity. Solomon's paradox is the idea that people reason more wisely about other people's problems than their own. If your friend came to you and said, I feel like I'm failing, I can't handle this, everything is ruined, you would not agree with them. You would slow them down. You would zoom out. You would offer perspective. But when it is your own situation, that wisdom disappears. Why? Because self-immersion clouds reasoning. When you are inside the emotion, you lose objectivity. But when you step into third person, you simulate being your own advisor. You create psychological distance. And distance restores wisdom. You are not becoming someone else. You are accessing the clarity you already have. Rumination feels like a tangled knot. The more you pull at it, the tighter it gets. When you stay in first person, the loop feeds itself. I am overwhelmed. I can't handle this. Why is this happening to me? Each statement reinforces emotional immersion. But when you shift to third person, you interrupt the loop. Madison is feeling overwhelmed right now. She is having a stress response. Her brain is trying to protect her. That shift reduces fusion. And when fusion decreases, flexibility increases. Now your prefrontal cortex can come back online. Now you can choose a next step, not because the feeling vanished, but because you created space between you and it. Breaking the loop is not about silencing thoughts, it is about changing your relationship to them. OCD is not just anxiety, it is a disorder of misfiring threat signals. When an intrusive thought appears, the brain says this means something about you. It attaches identity to it. But self distancing interrupts that attachment. When you say, Madison's brain is producing an intrusive thought, you are separating the thought from the self. You are labeling it as a mental event, not a moral failure, not a hidden truth, not evidence, just a brain signal. And that separation reduces compulsive urgency because the thought no longer feels fused with identity. That is powerful for OCD. It lowers shame, it lowers panic, it lowers the need to fix it immediately. When we are emotionally flooded, our decision making shifts. We move from long term thinking to short term relief. That is why we ruminate. That is why we compulsively seek reassurance. That is why we avoid. It feels urgent, but urgency is not always aligned with your best interest. Self distancing improves rational self interest. When you shift into third person, you reduce emotional heat. And when emotional heat lowers, cognitive clarity increases. Now you can ask, what would actually help Madison long term? What choice serves her future self? You move from reaction to strategy, and that shift improves performance under stress, not because the emotion disappears, but because you are no longer inside it. When you feel the spiral begin, follow this sequence. Step 1, notice, catch the I statement. I am failing. I can't handle this. Why is this happening to me? Do not fight it. Just notice it. Step 2, shift. Replace I with your name. Madison is feeling overwhelmed right now. She is having a stress response. Step 3, coach. Speak to yourself like you would speak to someone you care about. This is temporary. Her brain is activated. She does not need to solve everything right now. Step 4, choose. Ask one rational question. What is one small step that helps her long term? That is the protocol. Notice, shift, coach, choose. Simple, repeatable, trainable. This technique is not limited to anxiety spikes. You can use it in endurance. When you feel like quitting, Madison is tired right now. She can take one more step. You can use it in conflict. Instead of, I am so angry, shift to, Madison is feeling hurt in this conversation. That creates space before reaction. You can use it with painful memories. Madison is remembering something difficult. Her body is responding. It lowers intensity without denying the experience. Anywhere emotion feels overwhelming, distance creates clarity. This is a portable regulation skill. You can use it mid-meeting, mid-argument, mid-spiral. No one even has to know. Your brain does not just hear language, it responds to it. When you say, I am failing, your brain encodes that as identity. When you say, Madison is struggling with this task, your brain encodes that as circumstance. Identity feels permanent. Circumstance feels workable. Words shape perception. Perception shapes emotion. Emotion shapes behavior. So when you change your words, you are not being positive. You are changing neural processing. You are changing how your brain categorizes the experience, and that changes how you move through it. Small shift, big difference. Everything you learned today is backed by research on self-distancing and emotional regulation. But more importantly, it is trainable. Your brain is plastic. It encodes meaning based on repetition and language. When you change how you speak to yourself, you change how your brain categorizes experience. You are not suppressing anxiety. You are reshaping your relationship to it. You are not eliminating uncertainty. You are removing the automatic danger label. Small shifts in language can create large shifts in regulation. Not overnight, not perfectly, but progressively. You do not have to become fearless. You just have to become slightly more distanced from the storm, and that is enough to think clearly. This technique is not limited to anxiety spikes. You can use it in endurance. You can use it in conflict. You can use it when uncertainty shows up. And I want to give you a real example from this week. Tuesday, I was blindsided and told I had to be in office Friday. If you have OCD, you know how sudden change can feel like immediate threat. My brain could have labeled it as danger. Instead, I made a decision to train my perspective before Friday ever came. I created extremely specific "you are" affirmations and recorded myself saying them. One of them was, "You choose growth over comfort more often than ever before." Every time dread showed up this week, I didn't argue with it. I reframed it. Going into office equals growth. Friday morning, before I left, I looked at myself in the mirror and said, "You are allowed to enjoy working in office. You are allowed to be seen. You are allowed to have fun. Okay, go have fun. I love you." And I walked out. That day, I found out I now have to be in office 3 days a week. New boss, more changes, more uncertainty. And I did not spike once, not because nothing stressful happened, but because I chose my perspective before my brain encoded it as threat. That is not compulsive reassurance. That is intentional nervous system training. Anywhere emotion feels overwhelming, distance creates clarity, and you can use this the same way.